If you have been financially affected by the COVID pandemic, then this message is for you. Are you among the many folks who have lost their jobs, or if you've been furloughed or working from home at a reduced pay? If you have credit card debt and cannot make your monthly payments, we at Debt Fix Pros can help. Call us to see how we can reduce your interest rates and lower your monthly payments. If you are struggling with credit card debt, we can help. Call 800-591-5517. That's 800-591-5517.
This is the G Podcast with your host, Tommy B.
Hey, y'all, welcome to episode 65 of the G Podcast. And it is, and I have to make it official and just say 9 days, 17 hours as we wait until inauguration. But, I got to show my age just a little bit. If some of y'all might remember, and I'm not going to introduce my guest yet, there was this time when ABC ran this America Held Hostage. Raise your hands if you remember when ABC, and this was, I think, during the Carter administration, during the Iran hostage crisis. I remember America Held Hostage, and quite frankly, it feels like we're being held hostage. I'll be honest with you. And we'll get into that a little bit more. But of course, this is the G Podcast. Each week we do news, politics, that good pop culture, tea from Tanya B, and more. And we are on Amazon Music, by the way, y'all. Unlike Trump, we are still on Amazon. You can use your Echo Smart device and just simply say, Alexa, play This is the G Podcast. And you'll find us. It'll play us. And also you can check us out. Our YouTube channel is up and running. And you can also just go to our social media and the link is there. And normally I try to avoid the smart remarks. But truly, America is held hostage, and America, in my opinion, is in crisis. And I think there are some people who realize that, and some people who are coming to the realization that it is. And some of us, like most of us, I would say all of us on the podcast, have known that we've been under crisis for 4 years or 5. It's been 4 years of crisis. So with that said, I do want to introduce, before I get to Vi and Tanya B, our first guest, Harold Michael Harvey. How you doing, sir? Just want to welcome you to the show. How you doing?
I'm doing great today. How are you today?
Hey, I'm good. And I just want to introduce, for those of you, first of all, let me give, I got to make sure I always give Harold Michael Harvey his props. He is the author of Freaknik Lawyer, a memoir on the craft of resistance. And boy, do we need resistance right now. He is a past president of the Gate City Bar Association, recipient of the Gate City's R.E. Thomas Civil Rights Award. If y'all haven't gotten it, I love the book. It's a great book, his book, Freaknik Lawyer. He's also the Living Now Bronze Medal winner for male memoir 2020. And I think you won that for your C.T. Vivian book. Am I correct in saying that?
No, I won that for the Freaknik Lawyer book. Mm-hmm. But the C.T. Vivian book is up for some awards for this year.
Yeah, and the C.T. Vivian. Go ahead, sir. Go ahead.
Yeah, we'll see what happens later in the year on the C.T. Vivian book.
The C.T. Vivian book is also an excellent book. It's my C.T. Vivian story, a flame that burned brightly. Thank you so much for being on the show today. I know it was last minute, but so much happened this week. I had to make sure that you were on, definitely, to address some of the things we have to talk about.
My pleasure to be here.
Okay. And Y.O. Lattimore, I got to give it up to Y.O. Knowing Y.O. seems like for a lifetime. Y.O., I got to give you the DJ horn too, because you know what that's all about. You know how we roll. And she's representing Macon, Georgia, a poet, community activist, entrepreneur, motivates folks through social justice and her poetic peace movement. Just a great storyteller, great skills. She works with young people, an entrepreneur with her company, Like Water Publicity. Y.O., thank you so much for coming on the show today, last minute. Thank you.
Thanks, Tommy B.
Thank you so much.
What's going on, everybody?
Yeah, and we're going to hear from you. But and I got to get to my regulars on this show. Our digital guru is on the road. She's traveling, but she always makes a way to get here. Digital entertainment guru, master of the tea. And you know what? This week, Tanya B, we just going to make politics the tea. How about that? Politics.
We're going to have some polity this week. How about some polity?
Polity. It is definitely polity. Okay. Tanya B, give it up for Tanya B, y'all. And we call him, I got to go to my other co-host. He is the country commentator, the absolutely pride of Forsyth, Georgia. I didn't say where you live now, but he's the pride of Mary Persons High School. Run it.
That is correct. The MP Bulldogs.
And he's always trying to inspire us every week to do better. And hopefully you can inspire these other folks to do better too, Vi. Vi, thank you so much, Vi. I'm going to give it up for Vi who's on this show.
Thank you, my brother. Thank you for having me.
And I know I woke you up. How can you sleep during this week, man? How can you sleep? How can you sleep? That's all I got to say. It ain't no time for sleep. But first, let's do this, y'all. I want to make sure that we kind of frame the conversation well. So before we get rolling, I'm going to play the week in review from Syracuse Mike, and then we'll come back and talk about everything that happened this week and try to frame this for the podcast audience. Okay, so we'll be right back.
News team, assemble!
It's time for the week in news with Syracuse Mike.
For any other president, a recording telling the Georgia Secretary of State to find votes would be politically and legally devastating. The Washington Post released part of Saturday's call. Here is just a little of it.
The people of Georgia are angry. The people of the country are angry. And there's nothing wrong with saying that, that you've recalculated.
Well, Mr. President, the challenge that you have is the data you have is wrong.
The leaked audio comes as Congress is set to certify the Electoral College votes on Wednesday. A dozen Republican senators, along with well over 100 Republican House members, have said they are going to challenge the results based on unsupported allegations of voter fraud. On Capitol Hill Sunday, some Republicans expressed alarm about the call, while Democrats indicated they think it's a potential criminal offense. It should be noted that this week's challenge will not prevent Joe Biden from being inaugurated on January 20th. Gabe Sterling, the top point man for elections in the Secretary of State's office, went through a lengthy list Monday of what he said are the facts in Georgia concerning the November election that President Trump has said he won. He did not. Sterling also had a few words about that telephone call between the president and Georgia's Secretary of State.
But I personally found it to be something that was not normal, out of place, and nobody I know who would be president would do something like that to a Secretary of State.
One of the many claims Sterling debunked was a report that over 66,000 people below the age of 18 voted in November. Sterling says the actual number was 0. The U.S. Capitol building was eventually secured following what many people called a national disgrace. Getting much of the blame, President Donald Trump. If you missed a lot of what happened, during a rally earlier in the day, he urged supporters to head to the Capitol. They stormed the building. After getting inside, Congress, which was in the process of certifying the election, then temporarily suspended a last-ditch effort by some Republicans to throw out the results. Police evacuated the House and the Senate as more protesters started to enter the building. Before it was over, several law enforcement officers were hurt, a woman was shot and later died, dozens were arrested, Capitol building windows were smashed, the mayor of D.C. ordered a 6 p.m. curfew, and the National Guard was called in. D.C. Police Chief Robert Conte.
What we witnessed was unlawful, riotous behavior, and people that come to our city engaged in unlawful behavior will be held accountable.
After hours of pressure, President Trump released a video via Twitter telling his supporters to go home.
You have to go home now. We have to have peace. We have to have law and order. We have to respect our great people in law and order. We don't want anybody hurt.
But that came after President-elect Joe Biden took to the airwaves. He labeled what happened Wednesday an insurrection. Of course, the reaction on social media has been intense. One of the many observations by people of color has been, had this been a Black Lives Matter protest, authorities would have reacted much differently. And yes, there was an election Tuesday. Late Wednesday afternoon, many of the media outlets projected that Jon Ossoff has won the race against David Perdue. That means, along with Raphael Warnock's win, Democrats will control the Senate. The top 2 Democrats in Congress are calling for President Donald Trump to be removed from office just one day after supporters stormed and vandalized the U.S. Capitol. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi.
President of the United States incited an armed insurrection against America.
Incoming Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer agreed with Pelosi that it's time to remove the president. Members of Mr. Trump's cabinet and his allies have discussed invoking the 25th Amendment of the Constitution, which allows them to remove a president if he is seen as unfit. The biggest roadblock may just be time. Joe Biden's inauguration is less than 2 weeks away. President-elect Joe Biden was formally certified by Congress as the winner of the November election early Thursday morning. The debate was initially cut short by the violent break-in at the Capitol building Wednesday. Some Republicans still objected, but the events of the day caused many to back down and move the process along. While there have been over 80 arrests so far, Thursday, Mr. Biden became the highest-profile political leader to point out the double standard concerning the treatment of protesters during Wednesday's takeover of the Capitol.
No one can tell me that if had been a group of Black Lives Matter protesting yesterday, they wouldn't have been treated very, very differently than the mob of thugs that stormed the Capitol.
That from yesterday. Many civil rights leaders were quick to make the comparison to the summer protests while the chaos was taking place Wednesday.
I tell you, I want to start the conversation with Harold Michael Harvey. He wrote an excellent essay. It's titled "White Nationalists Trash Capitol, Politely Allowed to Leave Without Being Arrested." And I hope I wanted to frame the full week, because I think you have to grasp everything that happened this week, from the election happening in Georgia all the way through. And that's why I played all the different clips, because I think it's important to understand what happened on Wednesday. Even the Raspin, I can't even say his name, the Secretary of State for Georgia, even the incident there plays into all this. So with that said, Mr. Harvey's essay is an excellent read. I'll make sure it's on the podcast page. But one of the things that really stood out when I started reading that article, that essay, was they always get away, is how you started this. Tell us what you meant, and tell us what this article means.
They always get away. Some years ago, the day after the Trayvon Martin verdict came in and Zimmerman was let go, I had a college classmate who lives in Rochester, New York, and she called crying. And she says, they always get away. White people always get away. And this classmate grew up in Jackson, Mississippi, and was a young 10, 11-year-old when Medgar Evers was killed. And she saw how Mega's life was snuffed out, and how for decades, they got away with it. And so, when white people do things, there's always some justification for why what they did is excusable. But the slightest breach of the law or of the rules by a Black person, and, they'll throw in the kitchen sink everything at you that they can to prosecute you and keep you down. So that's what I meant. They always get away. Yeah. That the law doesn't apply to them. I think I mentioned in the article that my grandfather, Charles Harvey, who grew up in at least he lived in the 19th century, and for much of the 20th century, he always would tell me when I was a kid that the law applied to, the law was intended to keep Black people in check and in their place. It didn't apply to white people. And that's just what we seem to see. And that was carried out this week. There's all sorts of excuses and justification for why that group acted out and why they should be excused from trying to take over the government. That's essentially what I want to get at. And then the crux of that piece was that if the kid glove treatment is the appropriate treatment, everybody should get it. Or if the way the policing techniques that are used in the Black community, if that's the standard for policing, then let's police everybody the same way. And I wouldn't have a problem with it. if you tell me I have a constitutional right to protest if I have a grievance with my government, then I ought to be able to go to the street and voice that protest without being tear gassed and beat upon by the police. Because seemingly, when white people take to the street to protest their grievances, they are allowed to do that, and there's no pushback. So if the way we treat the Black community is the appropriate way to police, then we should police that way with everybody. But obviously, we know that's not the appropriate way.
Yeah.
And so people should be given the benefit of the doubt, and Black people, in most instances, are not given the benefit of the doubt, and that's wrong.
I want to mention some numbers, and then I want to go to Wyo about, as an activist, when you see things like this happen. Apparently, BuzzFeed had a report that only 500 officers were at the Capitol on that day, and there were supposed to be 2,000 police of the Capitol Police available. The other thing is reports are coming out as we tape the podcast. Apparently, the FBI and the New York Police Department told the Capitol Police to expect violence. So Wyo, from your perspective, because you've been involved in some, peaceful protest, what are your thoughts when you see that happen? You never want to see loss of life, without a doubt, in any circumstance. But ultimately, as an activist, involved in the community, bringing people together to protest, wrongs. How do you feel as an activist when you see what happened? People coming in. Really, it was like Disneyland. It was like a tour. With the exception of those who were violent to get in. What do you think? What are your thoughts, Wyo?
I do know, and I don't think that race played a major role in how in the police treatment. I mean, that's just point blank. I mean, I can say that we have rioted as Black people, and maybe looted, but when you see this government structure, them climbing the walls, breaking windows, and not enough security being there, it almost seems like it was planned and they were allowed. I was listening to an interview on CNN where a former Capitol Police, I think his name was Butch Jones, he made a point that Farrakhan visited the Hart Building.
Yep.
And I can't remember what year, but he said there was like extraordinary police, and the SWAT team was in the parking deck. So it was only Farrakhan and 4 other brothers with him.
Yeah.
There's not a balance. There are 2 Americas. There's no doubt about it. We're not in that same America with the constitutional rights and all the amendments that allow us the freedom to do what the white people do. It's just not there.
Yeah. And also,
and it was very obvious. It's protest. I can't even say they were more than a protest.
No.
They were beyond a protest.
No, these are rioters.
Savages.
Yeah, these were rioters and terrorists. And I want to go to Vi. Vi, you're how many years in military did you spend?
30.
Okay.
30 years.
Okay, so you're in military 30 years. Just from a standpoint of watching that, seeing some of the video that's coming out, what do you think from a military perspective about what you saw happen?
I don't think when the FBI called them and told them what was going on, and when they realized who the threat was supposed to be, because I don't think they think the whites will actually riot. So they didn't think they need that. They didn't think they need, because when they did do it, they had, because you know that they had sharpshooters up there?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No one ever pulled the trigger.
Yeah. Now,
and like they said, they was opening doors, letting them in. I mean, they did whatever they could to make sure they did not shoot or hurt anybody.
Yeah. So it wasn't a situation where you had police who were hell-bent on protecting some of the most important people in the world, which happened to be the majority of the government.
That's what they want you to believe, but no.
Yeah. Tanya
B, they were more concerned about protecting the Congress. No. Because they was out there holding the doors, opening the doors. If you so concerned about protecting the Congress, why are you letting them in?
Yeah. So true. Tanya B, your thoughts?
I think, I definitely agree with what my sister Wild said. There are definitely two Americas and there are two sets of standards or more. It's like the us and them type of thing. And I absolutely agree with the politician Clyburn. He said this was an inside job because it seemed like it was, like you said, you see them opening up the gate, like, come on in. There's not enough security. And I think it also spoke volumes when I saw I'm not even going to give him 5 seconds of whatever his name might be. The head of the police and I guess he's like the guard of the Senate or whatever that gentleman was. He just immediately just resigned. No rhyme nor reason.
Yeah.
So my radar says he was definitely complacent, but may have had something to do with it, as Representative Clyburn alluded to.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I just say, if it was Black and brown people, look like any of us, I would believe we can all agree, instead of there being 5 people dead, there could have been easily 500 people dead. They would not have even gotten to scale those walls. They would have been dropping like bodies out of the World Trade Center on 9/11. And we just had a lot more carnage.
Yeah.
And I think it wasn't until that police officer, who was not a person of color, died, that they decided they were going to turn up. And it really, and another thing that just makes my radar go up is that, why does the FBI go to the public asking for tips? You're supposed to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Had the highest grade of facial recognition software and things along that line to find those people as they have been. It's not hard to find them. All you have to do is Google it or go on YouTube. And for the people that have gotten arrested, I have absolutely no, I'm a compassionate person. I believe in being, humble and kind, but I don't feel the least bit sorry for any of them. You got what you deserved. For the woman that got tear gas, to quote Bernie Mac, to wrap it up in a bow, shouldn't have been up in there.
You're right. And I got to speak to what Wyo was saying, and of course, Mr. Harvey, regarding the two different Americas and what we're all saying. They don't take white supremacists as a true threat. And that's part, and Mr. Harvey, do you agree with that statement? I don't think America, and even we just got rid of or Barr resigned. Okay. Mm-hmm. I don't think he was unwilling to really look at white supremacy or white supremacist groups as a true threat. And I think, if anything, when you look at Congress, the fact that they had to cower and protect themselves by going under desk, it was you had octogenarians in situations where, quite frankly, nobody's really talking about the COVID exposure, the COVID-19 exposure, that all these folks coming into the building unprotected, no mask, touching everything. I've already heard that some of the folks who were hunkered down, there was a case of COVID in a group of senators where they're going to have to, a lot of these senators are going to have to quarantine. So nobody's really looking at every single threat that actually occurred and the amount of damage, long-term damage. But I will say, one of the main issues, in my opinion, is that they don't take white supremacy as a true threat. And you're absolutely right. I think Wyo mentioned, or Vi, you mentioned it as well. They don't think white people will riot and will riot.
Now, the FBI take them serious. CIA take them serious. It's more or less our government.
Yeah.
President Trump people don't. Because they even said it. They said, it's our biggest threat.
Mm-hmm.
It's our people who is the white power group is our biggest domestic threat right now. They even said that.
But I want to go around the room. I'll start with you, Vi, and I'll just go around. Do you guys, and I believe this, but I'm wondering if you believe it. I feel that law enforcement is infiltrated by white supremacy groups.
That's definitely true. That's been proven. That's been proven.
Mr. Harvey, Harold, do you agree?
Yeah, I think that is the case, and I think that when you start talking about criminal justice reform, one of the things you got to do is go in and clean out all of the police departments. You got to clean out the FBI. You got to clean out Secret Service. You got to clean out Homeland Security. You got to clean out your local sheriffs and police departments, and then your state GB investigative agencies, because those guys go into the military, they come out of the military well trained, and they go into these police departments and they act out their racial prejudices in the police apparatus. So yeah, I think that a significant part, if Biden is going to be serious about criminal justice reform, you actually got to go in and clean house.
Yeah.
You've got to weed out the bad white apples in the law enforcement in order to have true criminal justice reform. So it's not just so much as a policy. You've got to get these. You got to root out these racist law enforcement agents, and that's where the problem lies, and that's the solution to the problem.
Yeah, I think. I mean, while your thoughts as well, because I think you already mentioned the fact that they just looked like they were just letting each other in. But Wyo, do you think it's infiltrated?
Yes, for sure. White supremacy and human supremacy. When you've dealt with police of color as well, there's just something that they need. They need some type of training to let know they're not above the law, because that's what a lot of elected officials and police, especially police.
But you know what I mentioned, and I know what you're about to say. I bet you're about to say this, Mr. Harvey. They practice some hella restraint. Don't you think? When it comes down to restraint, that's the most. When it comes to white people, it's the most restraint, because when you talk about this week, Tamir Rice, 12-year-old, playing in the park with a toy gun in 2014, police just rolled up on him and pulled out a gun, shot him. And you've got all these black police shootings where no restraint was given. But go ahead. I know you had something to say. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, that's basically, you said in a different way than I was going to say it. I don't think it's so much training, because they know better. I think you just got to get rid of them. Yeah. Because they know better. And we know they know better because we see how they acted yesterday. A couple of days ago. And we see how they act when white people are in the streets, when those, they never go in and push and shove them around and gas them and baton them and dog them and water hose them and take them to jail in mass numbers. So they understand restraint. It's just that when it comes to black people, they do not want to show or exercise good judgment and allowing the situation sort of like unfold peacefully. Because, when you go back in our history, our protests have always been peaceful. And then when you come to later day, and I'm talking about in my generation, but even when you come down to Black Lives Matter Day, the group initially got in the street peacefully. And so the violence doesn't start until the police come out in full force and start pushing and shoving people around. Yeah. So our demonstrations have always been peaceful. They won't allow us to be peaceful because they want to come in and club us and beat us across the head. But we didn't see that type of force used against a group of people who was hell-bent on taking over the government and installing the current president as some sort of president for life, probably.
Yeah. Let me say this too. If y'all remember Lafayette Square this summer, that situation where you had peaceful protesters, I remember just sitting there watching that, and and Cheeto Jesus wanted to walk across the street and get the photo op. How they treated those protesters. I mean, it's in stark contrast to what we saw this week. So we've got not only the comparisons that you're talking about, Mr. Harvey, but within the these last few months. So I think if I'm somebody like Wyo who is involved in protest and social justice, and I think we all care. I know we all care. Yes. The situations aren't comparable. So right. I want to do this. I want to shift just a bit. And I want to play, you guys familiar with Ana Navarro. And I'm not a big the View watcher since Meghan McCain came back, but I was glad to see Ana Navarro back on to talk about this situation. I want to play a clip, and I want y'all to listen to what she has to say about the enablers. And I want to talk about the Republican enablers. So I'm going to play this, and we'll come back on the other side.
Oh, Joy, so many different emotions, shock, sadness. Listen, I fled communism. I've seen this before. I never thought I would see it in the United States of America. And I was so struck by the irony that Republicans, pro-Trump Republicans, have spent months telling us Democrats would turn America into Venezuela. Instead, it is Donald Trump who has turned America into Venezuela, a place where dictators try to perpetuate themselves in power by using mobs to threaten and attack their opponents. And Joy, I have got to say this, I'm livid. I am livid at all of those Republicans who have spent 4 years enabling, normalizing, legitimizing, emboldening Donald Trump, and who all of a sudden have woken up from their 4-year fever. You're not going to erase in 4 days what you have done in 4 years. They knew exactly who he was because they told us. We've got the video. Lindsey Graham knew who he was, and Ted Cruz knew who he was, and Marco Rubio knew who he was. And all of them looked the other way and played stupid and were accomplices because they liked his Cuba policy, or because he moved the embassy in Israel, or because they liked his abortion policy or his judicial nominations. And they were willing to look the other way and embrace and legitimize a criminal, a person who is a deranged madman who has threatened the national security and social fiber of America so that they could get the little bones that he threw at them and that they wanted. They don't get to rewrite history. They were on the wrong side of history, and they have been attacking mercilessly. Republicans like Mitt Romney, Republicans like my husband, like myself, for 4 years, telling us that we compromised, that we were sellouts. No, you sold your souls out. You sold your souls out to support a criminal, and you're going to have to live with that. You are going to have to live with that the rest of your lives. There is nothing you're going to say in the next 13 days that's going to erase what's happened in the 4 years. Just imagine what would have happened if they had voted to impeach him instead of what they did, or if they had resigned after Charlottesville instead of waiting till now, 13 days before. So you know what, guys? Well, you own this. You own this just as much as Donald Trump does.
Hey, I want to play this one more clip from Rick Perry from 2015.
The White House has been occupied by giants, but from time it is sought by the small-minded, the divisive figures, propelled by anger, appealing to the worst instincts in the human condition. A barking carnival act that can best be described as Trumpism. A toxic mix of demagoguery and mean-spiritedness and nonsense that will lead the Republican Party to perdition if pursued. Let no one be mistaken. Donald Trump's candidacy is a cancer on conservatism, and it must be clearly diagnosed, excised, and discarded. Donald Trump was born into privilege. He received deferments to avoid service in Vietnam. He breathed the free air thousands of heroes died protecting. And he couldn't have endured for 5 minutes what John McCain endured for 5.5 years. My fellow Republicans, beware of false prophets.
Beware of false prophets. Now, you know, we've been saying that again. I don't play that because somebody on this panel did not say that, because I think we've been saying it since we saw him come down that escalator. But Tanya B., you heard what Ana said, and you listened to Rick Perry, who, by the way, Rick Perry went on to actually become his energy chief. So, you know, the kiss-ass sycophants who were involved, who knew all this in the beginning, who said basically what we saw this week, they predicted this would happen, actually enabled him. So, Tanya B., when you hear a lot of these politicians, I call it do the Republican two-step, what do you think? What are your thoughts?
I think that look, they have no rhythm. They're off the beat. I would not give them a high score. It's not easy to dance to. But, one thing I just want to share, I don't want to go off topic of what you were saying, but one thing this whole thing has taught me is, the variety of faces that white supremacy has, just like Black and brown people come in many different shades and hair textures. Mm-hmm. You've got realtors out there. It could be the person that you called that may be at the closing table when you go to buy or sell your house. You have CEOs out there. You have other politicians out there. And then you also have attorneys out there. So, and then, that just really reminded me of just the systematic mistreatment of Black men in the penal system. You've got these attorneys who might look like they come from Harvard or Yale and may be highly educated, but again, they just don't have their hoods on. So, look at the numbers, how really Black males keep the penal system in business and have made it very profitable for those people. So, for me, it was just a real lesson again in the wolf in sheep's clothing, comes in many, many textures, because some of those people you would not think, would be in a place like that. And then I also look at Tamara Housley, one of the Tia and Tamara Housley, the twins from Sister.
Yeah.
One of them is married to the white man who's an avid Trump supporter. How about, this whole thing about canceling folks, not that we haven't already done it. Clarence Thomas's wife is an advocate and supporter of what went on up there.
Yeah.
On Wednesday, Becky needs to just go somewhere and sit down and be quiet. But she's the same woman that thought Anita Hill deserved to give her an apology. And we just told her to go kick rocks in an open-toe shoe. So, I guess my radar is up that much higher in my interactions with people that don't look like me.
Yeah. Go to you, Mr. Harvey. When you hear a lot of the enablers come back, doing the reverse, doing the moonwalk, I'm not saying what we should. I think, Black people know, the ones who've actually, understood what we had, what we were dealing with. We already know to just tell them to keep it moving. But what goes through your head when you hear?
Well, it makes my blood boil. And they get no sympathy from me. They knew who he was. They supported him. They propped him up. And when the case was made last January to impeach him, they failed to go along. Yeah. I have no sympathy for them, and I don't want to hear, what they have to say today. Yeah. Because when the issue was on the line and they had an opportunity to do something about it, they failed to carry through. They can just keep that moving.
Wyo, do you think we should view people like Loeffler, who decided at the last minute she wasn't going to object, as profiles encourage?
No, they are sellouts. She's definitely a sellout. I mean, she was defending him at first, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or upholding him.
Yep.
And so you're saying she dropped out at the last minute?
Yeah, at the last minute, she decided because, we had, they had already started. And
the day after the revote, she changed her mind.
Yeah, she changed her mind.
She wasn't one of the, it was about 8 of them. She wasn't one of those.
She was one of them. She was straight up.
Initially, she was one of the 8.
Mm-hmm.
But after...
Yeah, I think he's
Wednesdays, when they took the vote, she decided that she would not go along with it.
Yeah.
Because she knows. I mean, it's. I think when they're in those positions, they have to. They have a role to play, and that's what she was doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But maybe her conscience just didn't allow her to keep going with it.
No, I'm gonna make a statement. Let me make a statement.
No conscience.
Ain't no you know what I think it is? You know what I think it is? I think she owns the Atlanta dream. She owns the Atlanta dream. She's an WNBA. No, I think she is a WNBA owner, and she lost.
She don't care about that.
I think let me say this, Vi. She lost. She lost to Warnock. Okay. First of all, she lost. Okay. She doesn't have a political she does. I mean, I don't think she's going to stay in politics anyway. I think it was a short-term run. She didn't run in the first place. She was appointed by Governor Kemp.
That's right.
Okay. So I think now she's attempting to save face because her business depends on the people who've known that Trump was, you know what, all along. We've always known the folks who will support the dream, which has always been surprising to me that she picked up the mantle in the first place. But I think it looked even worse for her after the rioters. And, you know, I'm going to play something from Rob Redding in just a minute. Not yet. But I think he clarifies, and it does make sense that by what you're saying, they don't care. They really don't. There's no the conscious part of this. They don't care.
Only changed her mind because there was no reason for her to stick with it.
Yeah,
she had lost the election.
Yeah, but so I think it's money. I think it's money too. I think ultimately it's business.
That's why she changed for it. It wasn't that a conscious thought you were doing the right thing. It's just, well, I'm not in politics no more. Now I got to think about my business.
Yeah, it's business. She's thinking about the business. Yeah,
it's a business decision.
Yeah,
I can agree with that, definitely.
Yeah, I'm going to play a clip from Rob Redding. I know I'm pretty clip heavy, but I want to make sure that, you know, we're not talking conspiracy theories. I mean, we don't talk a lot of conspiracy theory on this show. You know, Harold Michael Harvey studies this. He knows what he says, what he speaks of. And that's why I bring him on the show. You know, Wyo's been out in the community and worked with a lot of organizations. We've all been exposed. As a podcaster, I've been dealing with this for about 5 years. I started, doing my own podcast when the 2016 election was about to take place. So, we've been through this on a weekly basis, dealt with this, and we've known I think all of us on this, but I think most people have known from day one who we were dealing with. But I want to play this clip from Rob Redding. We'll come back on the other side.
You might trick yourself into believing that they actually care about you as black people, that they care about a Confederate flag flying through the Capitol or that noose outside, but they don't really care. They only care about one thing, and that's their jobs. Just like those, quote, protesters or domestic terrorists that were out there. They only care about their jobs. Just like those senators, those Republicans that backtrack, cared about their jobs. And just like you have people now resigning, in the cabinet, resigning from the staff, now concerned about getting their next job. Because these folks work from administration to administration. That's what they do. And they're only concerned about one individual. That's themselves. Just like Donald Trump. They're no different. Yeah. They're all the same.
Absolutely. And by that speaks to what you're saying. I mean, they don't care about, they don't care, but I think when there's a career opportunity, you look at Ted Cruz and Josh Hawley out of Missouri and the other 6 senators, and then you had 139 members. And I'm going to have the list of all the folks, because what I think we have to do, if any of these senators or House members are part of your district, you need to call them daily. You need to make phone calls to them and let them know that they need to resign. Really resign, and especially the ones who, after all this went down, they still came back and objected. And what the news is calling this basically is the big lie. Over the next weeks, over the next few months, and I wouldn't be surprised, it's going to go down in history as them perpetuating the big lie. And the big lie is, Trump's big lie about winning the presidential election in a quote unquote landslide. So you're looking at 6 senators plus the Ted Cruz, Josh Hawley, and then you're looking at 139 members of the House. So I'm going to have that list posted on the podcast page. And I know, a lot of y'all will say, well, what's that going to do? We need to let them know. I mean, I think as citizens, I mean, I'm not going to say what district I'm in because I don't want y'all coming after me again. But my congressional district, my quote unquote congressman was one of the 139. So I think you need to look at the list and you need to find out if any of your Congress people or senators, any of your House members, House representatives or senators, anybody in Congress is on that list. And I think you have to get on the phone and call their offices or send letters We've got to be vocal about this. I know some of y'all will say, well, what's that going to do? We got to bug the shit out of them because candidly, there's going to be pressure on all these guys to resign. And I think this is, Tanya B., I get a feel from this, even though a lot of people didn't die. Okay. This is turning out to be 9/11, quite frankly, impact wise. And the reason I say that, and Harold Michael Harvey, I'd like your opinion on this, is because what they are attempting to do by actually having him either impeached, resign, or the 25th Amendment, they want him out of politics for good. That's the ultimate goal. It's not just to send a message. They want him gone. So Correct. With that said, Mr. Harvey, we're looking at 25th Amendment, resign, or impeachment. When you look at those three options, which one of those looks most appealing to you as somebody who does, political analysis?
I would have to say impeachment. And I know the pushback to impeachment has been that there's not enough time. But here's the deal. There has to be some accountability.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And if you excuse it and let him just go away without there being an acknowledgement of the fact that this was wrong, and that there's some accountability, he has to accept the responsibility for this unlawful activity. Then what's to stop him? Mm-hmm. So President-elect Biden, he doesn't want to get involved because he wants to start on January the 20th with carrying forth, his policies on getting the country back on a sound financial footing, and also getting the virus under control and so forth. And we all want him to do that, and we all need to do that. But we can't begin anew until we address this problem. Mm-hmm. So I think impeachment would, number one, and a conviction after the impeachment would end his political career. Obviously, the 25th Amendment, if that was exercised tomorrow, he would be gone tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And I think the third choice is
we said resignation.
Is censure.
Oh, censure.
Resignation.
Censure as well. Yeah, censure as well.
Censure is one possibility also. But more importantly, the resignation. So if he resigns, he's gone immediately. If they do the 25th Amendment, he's gone immediately. But those sort of like lets him off the hook without any accountability. Impeachment and a conviction of that charge, will not enable him to run for public, at least for federal office again. Mm-hmm. And so, that is some accountability, and he needs to be spanked real good for what he did, because essentially what he was trying to do was to have those people go in there, find the ballots, because all 50 states had sent their certified ballots to the Congress. Yeah. And they want to go in there and burn the ballots so there would not be any ballots to certify Joe Biden and Kamala Harris as the new administration. So, I would say impeachment. It may take time. Mm-hmm. It may prolong the time that you and I receive our other $2,000 stimulus check. Yeah. But so be it. Yeah. I'm willing to accept that.
Yeah, me too. I agree.
So if he's impeached,
go ahead. YO, go ahead.
If he's impeached without a conviction, that won't restrict him from running for federal political office.
Well, no. Here's
an impeachment by itself.
Well, here's what I heard, and look, I'm going to let you go ahead because I'm letting you adjust your mic, Mr. Harvey. But one of the things, and you can address this, what I've heard basically is there has to be, and they're weighing this because there has to be, from what lawyers and constitutional lawyers are saying, is that there has to be an impeachment along with the conviction. In order, after the conviction, they are in a position where they can actually restrict him from running for office, any federal office. In addition to that, they take away his the money that that presidents typically get. What do you call it? Not their what do you call it, Mr.?
Essentially, it is a pension.
Yeah, pension. They take away the pension. They pick. It's about $200,000 a year. Yeah. Go ahead.
And when you look at the reason that in my day, when I was a youngster coming out of college, the reason that Richard Nixon went ahead and resigned was because that preserved his right to have a presidential library, the funding for that, and it preserved the pension and the Secret Service contingent that he had up until he died.
Yeah.
So basically, the legality of it is an impeachment is only an indictment. If you look at it in the sense of of court that we are accustomed to every day, the impeachment is the accusation, is to accuse the president of having committed a crime, or at least have violated some rules of the Constitution.
Yeah.
And so then when you have a trial in the Senate, as we had last January, if he is convicted by the Senate, then he's found guilty in a sense that we're looking at it in terms of criminal law as we know every day.
Yeah.
And so with that conviction, you get stripped of your rights. And so he wouldn't be, there's never been any talk about a presidential library.
Yeah.
He probably has never given any plans to it because he probably never had any interest in that. And what would he preserve for future generations to want to go and visit and learn from? Based on what he...
Yeah, that's his. If he can ever get access to that's his library, because he didn't write. he didn't read.
But so there you have it. I mean, the route to go, and it may not be the popular one, and you may not get a conviction if you went the impeachment route again. But I kind of think that you got to put the pressure on the Congress, on the representatives to move quickly to indict, and on the Senate this time to do the right thing. Had they done it a year ago?
Yeah.
I mean, we were just here last year, about a year ago, 12 months ago.
Yeah.
And had they done it then, what happened this week would not have occurred. But they didn't.
Yeah.
And so that's what we're faced with. So the option that looks the best to me would be impeachment, although it takes a little bit more time and the outcome is not certain. And of course, if you go that route, it will delay to some extent President-elect Biden putting his plan into place to get the country back on track again.
Yeah.
But I'm willing to sacrifice a little bit longer.
I am too.
Like I'm willing to stay in, not to get the virus. I'm willing to sacrifice a little bit longer in order to get this right. Because if we do not hold him accountable, and we let another white guy get away just because they always get away, then we really are carrying that mess into the future.
Absolutely.
And it's going to gum up.
Absolutely.
It's going to gum up the process down the road.
Yeah, and somebody might try it again.
Oh, absolutely. Because you know what? Here's the deal. He has written a blueprint, basically, for the next guy who's smarter to come back and do it the right way. So I'm willing to wait. I agree with you. I'm in a position where, I think the American people have to be patient and let this thing happen. But honestly, for those of you who are concerned about your check and concerned about, the COVID, the checks, that's a signature. And I think with the Democrats having both the House and the Senate right now, that's just a matter of it getting written up, being debated, and then being pushed through. Those things are going to happen because, quite frankly, it would be a different conversation if we didn't have Warnock and Ossoff winning in Georgia. It puts us in a position now, I think, where we can be a little bit more patient about impeachment and go about it the right way. Because I'm going to step out on a limb and say this. I think what we saw this week is something that a terrorist would. This is like a bin Laden move. You know, when you look at, and you've been in military, Vi, 30 years, you know, anybody who would do something like this against the U.S. government would be in a manhunt. Okay.
Right.
And I think that not maybe the folks who've been infiltrated on the local level, but I really think the folks he's already pissed off. The FBI, the NSA, the intelligence people, they got no love for this guy.
Oh no. But he downplayed everything. He downplayed everything they do.
Yeah. So I think it is their comeuppance to pursue him like a terrorist and to look at this situation as if he's a terrorist. So in my opinion, what went down this week is nothing short of somebody planning a 9/11 because, YO, just like you said, this thing was planned. This was orchestrated. You could see it from the way I couldn't believe the thing that I was sitting there watching. Tanya B, I know you're still there. As I'm watching this, okay, my frustration was, damn, when's somebody gonna do something? That's going through my head. And then when it was all over, why they letting them leave? Because
and that's the thing that's disturbing, that they're just being arrested.
They walked in like they walked in like It's a Small World at Disney. They just went on in, and then they just came out with basically souvenirs. They came out with souvenirs.
Taking selfies, pictures, posting them, going, what?
Yeah.
So
that's really?
So I do, even with the resignation of the Capitol Police Chief, and I would not have allowed him, candidly, to resign on his own time. His resignation, in my opinion, should have been tendered immediately, because the more time they give him, and if he's complicit, the more time, because they're already talking about the potential of a threat on as we tape the podcast on a Sunday. They're talking about next weekend, the potential of another threat, either Saturday or Sunday, and also a potential threat on Inauguration Day. Now, as I mentioned before, NYPD and FBI already told the Capitol Police before this happened that there is a threat. They knew there was a threat. With 500 Capitol
now they want
Police?
to bring in National Guard, and they're bringing in people from Jersey and all across the country to be in DC, up and through the end of the inauguration, the amended festivities, and how interesting that all this is going down on MLK weekend.
Yeah. So, and just, I promised y'all that I'd only keep you an hour, and I appreciate your time. I want to go through a couple of other things when it comes down to, and Tanya B, help me with this, with social media bans. 45 has been banned, first of all, from Twitter, Facebook, Spotify, Snapchat, Shopify. I don't know what the
everywhere.
Hell. Shopify. Pinterest, Twitch. You can't TikTok, no YouTube, Instagram. No. And also Parler, which was supposed to be his next step for, I guess, in the interim, to use. That's the white supremacist mouthpiece right now. Amazon has cut their servers, so because they had inadequate content moderation. So, do you think that's enough, Tanya B, to keep him at bay, to keep the mouthpiece?
Oh well, I mean, aside from the fact he's probably had a meltdown or two already. And he, has probably gone over the edge, but I'm sure he's probably, just as soon as they shut one thing down, he's, got some people, although they may have the intelligence of a flea, to try to find another way. And maybe he may, he can't go and get a YouTube channel. And, then there was some talk of him starting Trump TV, but that won't happen soon enough. So, all he can do is walk the street and, get a megaphone like, the 60s.
But I want to get you, while you're on that, I do want to mention the media liars, like the Hannitys, the Mark Levins, the Limbaughs, the Laura Ingrams, who really, they've also propped up the big lie. When does the company, when do the companies, these broadcast companies who support these guys, where they air, like Fox News, when are they, Tanya B, when are they accountable for being?
They're accountable from day one for even, and I think, the media has given him way too much attention, which is what he wanted anyway. But, my thing, like you talk about Sean Hannity and the rest of these, I don't even know what to call them, purveyors who just want to drag everyone into the abyss of untruth and I guess, destruction.
Mm-hmm.
But, when will, and I don't watch everybody, but, the MSNBCs, the CNBCs, or wherever these people are, when do they, yoke them up and say, don't talk about him except to this point, if any at all.
Yeah,
and I'm sure if they could have, they would have had him on the air already. But I would really hope that, the heads of the networks would have put the kibosh on that.
Well, I'm not going to lie to you. It's been refreshing to not have a tweet with between.
It's been wonderful. It's like
refreshing.
watching those political ads on television or, having to go to my mailbox every other day and, see how many trees have died.
Oh, damn. I think they've even shut down the text message companies that were doing the mass texting. I think they've shut him down as well. I think he can do email and snail mail, basically.
Yeah, but he'll go. But he's on the dark web somewhere because all those, the Proud Boys and all the rest of them, until they catch up with him, they'll do something else. It's like when he had somebody else to tweet for him and they shut that person down.
Yeah.
It's going to be a goose chase. And then you look up and, it will be the 20th. I'm wondering now if he, and he said he wasn't going to the inauguration a while ago. He said that he was going to go down to Florida and have a rally and have another super spreader event.
Well, you know what? Let me say this, that this was why Twitter actually made a decision to shut down the account, because they felt that it was a message. He was sending a message to the rioters, the white supremacists, that he wasn't going to be there. So you can make it basically a clean opportunity to attack the event. I'm not going to be there.
Yeah.
And Twitter explained that.
Again,
yeah. Twitter explained that as part of the explanation for why they shut the account down, because they said he was sending code. He was dropping code in most of the tweets. So, hey, y'all, I appreciate everybody being on the panel for this show. You can give us a call, 413-556-9546. Would love your feedback, 413-556-9546. You can also hit us up on our social media accounts. All that information's on the podcast page. But Mr. Harvey, I'm going to throw it to you, and I want to go in a round table and get our last thoughts. Start with you, Mr. Harvey. I'll go to YO, Tanya B, and I'll come to you, Vi. Okay, so Mr. Harvey, what you got?
Well, several months ago, I think at some point in time last year, we talked on the podcast, and I told you that I thought that the ending of my novel, Paper Puzzle, is how this presidency is going to end.
Yep.
And as the screws get tighter and tighter, I see within the next 9-10 days it's a likely outcome.
Yeah.
So for anybody who hadn't read it, it's available on Amazon as an ebook. You can download it and get to the end. You'll see what I predict is going to end up with this Trump presidency.
And it ain't a happy ending for
all
the
of the
president.
frustration, I believe, is so a year ago when I said it, it seems so far-fetched because he was riding high. But, as I read the tea leaves, the things that are happening is what I foresaw would take place. And that pressure, I don't think he can withstand the pressure.
Yeah, I agree.
So that's my final thought.
Okay, go to you, Wayo.
I think we as a people have to understand all three branches of the government, the executive, judicial, and the legislative government, in order to make a difference, because things like this incident with these mobsters let you know that we're not represented when it comes to we the people.
Amen.
And I think we've got to educate ourselves a lot more to make a difference. I mean, that's what it's going to take for empowerment, from a local level up to the national level. And it gets discouraging sometimes, but we've got to have people in there that care. I mean, Biden is a white man, but he seems to care about the Black race and other nationalities as well. He seems to recognize how diverse people need to be in positions to make a difference. Yeah. And that's one thing that Trump just refused to recognize. It is diversity. And he made me think that I could be the president of the United States, honestly. And I've never, ever thought about.
I agree. And let me say that I'm glad you said that, because when I heard his response to this, it was purely, even mentioning the fact that his daughter was asking him about the difference between the treatment of Black Lives Matters and what happened on Wednesday. I think we're in for 4 years of inclusiveness, and even the cabinet members that I've seen him place. I think it's difficult to deny the fact that he is working to try to make this a government for all people. Tanya B., I'm going to go to you, and then I want to go over to Bai. Tanya B.?
Okay, I'll be quick. One thing I'll say is, again, to definitely include what Mr. Harvey and what Wyo said. And now's the time, now that it's almost like, how the young people say now, it's lit. So it's lit now. Now, get lit and get educated about, what these people are supposed to do with you and hold them accountable when they get into office. One thing, I got to give 5 on to Stacey Abrams, where she's been able to motivate young people and get them actively involved in the process. I was like, it's got to continue, because in 2 more years, we're going to have to go back again with Ossoff and I think Warnock again.
Yeah, Warnock again.
To get that, to light that fire of civil rights that has been extinguished, I would say, for the last several years. Because when this was all going on, I know nobody gave him a check, but where was Al Sharpton? So I think this is really a call to action and activism. And, again, if we could, there's got to be the next Stacey Abrams somewhere. So I think this has really been, to say a teachable moment in so many different ways is probably it's an underestimation, if there's such a word. But, I would just say that when Maya Angelou says, when people show you who they are, you must believe them. And all of these Republicans who are now, siding and with, or just, if you want to say condemning or not condoning Trump's behavior, don't believe the hype.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to say this and then...
Don't believe the hype.
Don't believe the hype. I'm going to say this and then I'm going to go by to your inspirational moment. And I want you to take us out with some inspiration. But let me say this, y'all. For almost 5 years, Trump has not been, rightfully held accountable. He has not been held accountable. I mean, and for the sake of future generations, because I think what we're doing now is not for now, it's for future generations. We can't take the bait, because you're going to hear a lot of people talking about, backpedaling, talking about we need to make this a kumbaya moment to bring the country together and allow him to simply, kind of go away on his own in the sunset. Here's a news flash. He ain't going nowhere, unless what's in the paper puzzle. And I'll leave it at that, Mr. Harvey, so they can go read the book. But or if y'all watch Scandal, Papa Pope gets involved, so he ain't going. Anybody who watch Scandal know what I'm talking about. But he ain't going nowhere right now. But I will say this, and I want to end it, that he, in my opinion, you can't negotiate with terrorists. You're not going to negotiate with a terrorist, and I think they've shown themselves to be terrorists, him and his minions. And I think the only way that we're going to be able to get anything done with him is through the judicial, through the courts. And so I'm going to leave it at that. And Vi, I got to do.
Yeah. How long before you go to the moment?
Oh, okay. Before you go to the moment, go ahead and say this. Go ahead before you go to your moment.
I'm going to say what we need to do is like the Obama moment, Stacey moment. We cannot let up right now.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, I know we got to come together, the family of the country, but we cannot let up.
Yeah.
We got to stay motivated. We got to remember this. Don't let them forget this. Remind these people that it was not okay. We have to hold everybody accountable. Have to hold the government accountable.
Yeah.
Have to hold the capital accountable that y'all let this happen.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not going to let y'all forget this. We're not going to let y'all put this on the road. We're going to remind y'all of this. We can come together as a country, but y'all need to face fact. That's 2 Americas.
Yeah, so true.
Face it.
Yeah. And you know what? This is not about partisanship. This is not about Democrat or Republican. It's about right or wrong. I'm going to leave it at that. Val, you ready for your inspiration, man? Here we go.
I'm ready, brother.
Here we go.
You know, I didn't come here to preach to you today.
Here's your inspirational moment with Vi.
Praise is the heartfelt response to God by those who love him. The more you get to know God and realize what he has done, the more you respond with praise. Praise is at the true heart of true worship. Let your praise of God flow out of your realization of who he is and how much he loves you. Revelation chapter 19, verse 1. Praise the Lord, salvation and glory and power belong to our God. Amen.
Amen, brother.
Amen.
Thank you so much.
Amen.
Thank you so much. Because, I think we definitely, I mean, honestly, I'll be candid with you. I know it seemed like a bleak week this week, but a lot of what happened this week, candidly, kind of needed to happen because we've been seeing it come to this. And I think it's propelled or is pushing the country in the right direction. I'll leave it at that. I want to thank you, Harold Michael Harvey. How can people get in touch with you, Harold Michael Harvey?
HaroldMichaelHarvey.com.
HaroldMichaelHarvey.com. YO. And let me give you some of that juice. There you go.
They can simply call me 478-719-2054.
And you're on Instagram too, right? Where you at on Instagram?
Yes. 2 letters.
Oh yeah.
2020.
And that's 2 letters 2020. I'll make sure that's on the podcast page as well. Tanya
I had to start that page over because it was hacked.
Oh no! Don't say that.
Yeah, so it's a new page, but it's 2 letters 2020.
Oh, okay, all right, but we'll make sure whatever information, that phone number, I'll make sure that's on the podcast page. Tanya B, thank you so much as always. I appreciate you. Tanya B gonna get to us one way or another if she's on the road or wherever. So.
Always
jumping in.
What's going on?
Yep. Tanya B, thank you so much. And y'all, with that, episode 65 is in the can. Don't forget, we love your feedback, 413-556-9546. And with that, we are out of here. Peace.
Peace.
Yeah.
You've been listening to the G Podcast with your host, Tommy B. The G Podcast is a production of the Castropolis Podcast Network. Thanks for listening.